are the original Star Wars better than the prequels? We all know the answer to this, so answer down below, because we know I'm right on this. The originals are much, much better.
No, the prequels are better. It goes like this: prequels, originals, sequels.
The sequels just aren't a part of it.
Yeah, they're terrible.
They don't exist.
Well, The Mandalorian's better than all of that, though, so that's my opinion. He hasn't seen it, so he can't verify that.
I won't judge. I'm not a huge Star Wars guy, but I'm a Star Wars guy enough to know that the originals are better.
Spoken from not a huge Star Wars guy,
but
you know what I'm talking about.
but you know what? This brings up a question of unnecessary and unmeaningful debates. Is life that way? Is life meaningless and uneventful? And are we just sitting here wasting our brain power, this matter that has the ability to think, right? From like a very popular view nowadays, nihilism, which is only a couple hundred years old, and we're actually reading a book that's kind of around that. In my language arts class, it's this book called, I think, Faults in Our Stars or something like that.
Oh, yeah. That's about nihilism?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Like,
isn't that like a romance book or something, or like a loving book?
Yes, but at least this is what my teacher is telling me about it. But we're learning nihilism through it because, right, it's about a girl that has terminal cancer, right? She doesn't see any purposes in life, and she's saddened by her circumstance, and it leads her to the conclusion that life is purposeless, and then this guy gets thrown into her life.
This week on Christians Against Book Reports.
but you see my point. So from a Christian point of view, what nihilism, I would say, is incorrect, because I think God gives us purpose. But what, in your view, what would be the best way to discuss with someone that is a nihilist, that
just believes there's nothing, or just nothing matters?
Yeah, nothing matters. You create your own purpose, or you just accept your fate, right?
Well, they shouldn't be for prisons then, because murderers are just nothing matters, right? Yeah. They shouldn't care if somebody steals their stuff. They shouldn't care if someone hits them, because it's all meaningless.
Yeah.
So what's the point? We can't be right or wrong if it's meaningless.
Mm-hmm. So
it's a very slippery slope once you start talking like that, because, and then it's actually a good gateway to talk about God, because, okay, once you start saying those things, people will usually say, oh, well, but, or, oh, this. It's not logic. They're not usually logically consistent on that. And really, you'll start to find that, okay, life's not meaningless, but they're just sad. or they're just trying to figure stuff out, you know? Because, if it's meaningless, then there's no right or wrong, and that can lead to bad things for civilization. And, I'd be curious to ask them how they define morality. How do you find what's moral and what's immoral? Are there morals? That'd be a good way to see kind of more what they think. But, I disagree with it 100%.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I'm glad you brought up the morality part of it, because everybody wants to reject God until it comes to the things that are fundamental to the idea of God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so a question I always ask people when they say that there's no purposelessness and that God doesn't exist, it's like, okay, define what is good, right? And they'll be like, oh, it's to do good things for other people. I'm like, no, define good. What are good things, right? And then usually they stumble upon it, and then if they're sophisticated atheists, then they'll go down the lines of evolution. And I'm like, well, I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I know a thing or two about evolution. And the fundamental part of evolution is natural selection, right? And a lot of things surrounding natural selection we view as society as evil. It's evil, right? Because it's like, okay, let the people that are able to survive, but the people that can't survive, kill them off.
We speak like Obi-Wan Kenobi. We say, how uncivilized. I think that was that Star Wars episode 2. Yeah. He says it. Look it up.
I haven't watched. I haven't watched the prequels in so long, man. I don't remember it. But no, it really creates this whole different way to look at society, right? And then it ultimately comes down to, well, America has decided this morality. I'm like, okay, you can go down that route. But one, you can't morally claim it as objective. And two, that means every atrocity that we have committed is moral within a certain purview, right? There is no consistency. So true nihilists usually don't stay consistent with their method. And it's why Frank Turek wrote a book called Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case, because they steal from the fundamentals of religion in order to argue against it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a guy that I like checking out. His name's Stefan Molyneux. He's not on YouTube anymore. They kicked him off for covering politics and stuff. But he's I guess you could call him a philosopher. But he'd formed a secular theory of ethics called UPB, or what is it? UPB. Oh, universally preferable behavior, which basically just says that's how you find what is good, is if is it universally preferable. It's not universally preferable to steal, because if everyone wanted you to steal, then it wouldn't be stealing, because you're giving it away, right? Same with rape, theft, murder, all that. So he wanted to make the case that there can be a secular form of ethics. And it's funny because he'll talk with like Christians about it. He used to be super anti-Christian, and then he realized, wait, they've been saying the same thing that I'm saying this whole time. And he says, yeah, it's funny because whenever I tell my theory of ethics to Christians, they're like, yeah, okay, we've known this for like 2,000 years. So so it's just kind of funny. But you know, nihilists and stuff will obviously disagree because they think everything's meaningless. So but it's interesting.
And you know,
hear that.
An interesting thing is like, okay, so there's two types of nihilism: absurdism and existentialism, right? And then I forgot exactly what absurdism says, but existentialism is like you create your own purpose, right? And it's like, okay, then what is the standard of you objecting to someone else's purpose, right?
There isn't standard.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It's
but
subjective.
we morally object to it. But if we morally object to it, we're just using our opinions, right? Our opinions of our perceived morality rather than an objective standard. I encourage everyone to go watch this debate between Dr. Frank Turek and Michael Shermer. Michael Shermer is a very well-known atheist. Yeah. And actually, outside of those debates, I find him a pretty interesting guy to listen to. But in those debates, he goes crazy. Like, absolutely crazy. Because him and Turek argue about morality. And Turek's like, well, define morality. And it's like, yeah, we need to let the gays get married and do good to others. And he's like, what standard are you pulling from? He's like, ask the people that are being killed. And it's like, dude, where are you going with this, right? You're just playing circles, right? And now I appreciate atheists like Richard Dawkins who admit that you cannot have objective morality without God. They admit to it. But atheists like Michael Shermer, they say, no, there is objective morality. It's like, how is it defined? By subjective means. It's
what do you think the objective morality is then for a Christian?
Well,
because I think it's subjective as we are now.
Well, subjective in understanding, but there's an objective morality. And then there's things, so for example, the Bible says that the law is written on our hearts, right? That's how the Gentiles know the attributes of God in that way, right? And so I wouldn't say that our morality comes from the 613 commandments of the Old Testament, because that doesn't necessarily define all of our moral code. It defines God's covenant with the Israelites, right? But many of those things contain the morality, right? But I think it's summed up as what Jesus said: love God and love others, right?
Yeah.
But we have 100%. It written on our hearts,
right? The reason I asked is just how would you define it in like a setting like that where an atheist saying, well, how is there objective morality?
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what you would say. I don't know what I would say. I would say it's understood subjectively as Christians. So I would have a tough time defining it personally. So I wonder maybe you have a better idea.
In in that morality that we're talking about, there are gray areas where we don't know, right? I mean, you and I could talk about, not to bring in anything too controversial for this episode, but like abortion, right? Now there's things that are fundamentally wrong about it, but there's like cases, is it right or wrong here, right? That's a gray area. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to things like stealing or just plain, if I were to shoot you right here for no apparent reason, like all of us would agree that isn't moral. So there is an objective standard, and the point of the argument is objectivity of morality allows you to make moral objections to things that are wrong.
Yeah, I tend to actually, it's funny that I brought up Stefan Molyneux. I tend to use UPB as a general framework because I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
If I had to define, ethics and morality, I would probably use those examples just to say what we kind of already know, So I like taking ideas that I like and blending them and mixing them up into a nice little... Yeah.
That's what I do with Calvinism and Arminianism. Like, well, both of them are wrong in some respect, but mix it up.
Yeah, for sure. So, for the viewers, I mean, don't be afraid to do that. Test out ideas and pray about them. Let the Spirit lead you and see what rings true. And just see how everything works together when you're considering these new thoughts. So what about like I don't know, transhumanism, which is to say for those that don't know that humans are just the caterpillar in the evolutionary scale, and eventually we should rise above that and go to the next evolution, which is probably machines and being essentially digital, and that is the butterfly that we are waiting to turn into.
I mean, this may sound controversial. If that's right, then
that's how I understand it.
If people are to object to people like Hitler and have that view, then they're missing the whole idea, right?
Well, what if it's not forcing anybody, but it's just saying that eventually, like, we should want to become digital. We should want to upload our brains into computers.
I think that's just weird.
Or merge with the machines.
Yeah, I think this is weird. If you want to do it, go right ahead. Yeah. You have the liberty to do so, but I will not be doing
Think
that.
about it, though. Imagine if they do have that capability to, or they think they have the capability to transfer your brain to a computer. The Christians would be freaking out over that. And
Mark of the Beast.
Well, yeah, they'd be saying, oh, it's impossible. They're just killing themselves, which maybe, I don't know. We don't really know how that works. I think that's actually, kind of a good point. But would they? I feel like they would say you're going to hell if you upload your consciousness because you're killing yourself, or this is unnatural, or you're trying to be your own God, whatever. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard a lot of crazy things. I remember going to this one church here in the Valley, and at the youth group, he was going over, he's dispensationalist, and he was going over dispensationalist eschatology, and he said, these mask mandates and the vaccine could be the mark of the beast. I'm like, what? Of all things, I'm like, shoot, I'm screwed then, right?
That'd be fun. How funny would that be if a surgical mask was the mark of the beast the whole time? Man. Everyone's like, oh, it's gonna be like a mark, but instead it's just a thing that goes over your face.
He's like, you can't go to the grocery store without a mask on, and I'm like, dude,
you can't drive without a driver's license either. I don't know how.
I'm sorry, man. I've heard this. I've had that one church. I've just heard so much stuff that it's made me cry sometimes out of laughter. But
that's a new one. The masks are the mark of the beast.
I think I forgot your question though, man.
I said yeah. Well, we know that Christians would probably be like saying like, oh, you're gonna go to hell if you upload your brain, and it's not natural and it's outside of God's order or whatever. Mm-hmm.
I think God would be a little concerned, and he'd be like, man, why are you doing that? But I don't think it's salvific.
Yeah.
I don't see any indication of that in Scripture.
Personally, I don't think it is anything really too bad. I mean, we already do life extension now. I mean, the life expectancy was way lower back in the day, and, reason transhumanism comes up is because people want to live for longer, or not be limited by biology to die. And I mean, we're not limited by biology, natural biology, like without medicine, really. They have medicine for a reason. And that's also why people say that they don't want vaccines and stuff, but like just in general, but because they don't trust the medicine. But I don't know. I don't think it's salvific, as you said, and I think if the problem is proving that you can actually continue to, I don't know, I don't trust it, but
I don't either.
Seems a little sketchy. Is the computer just mirroring what you are, but it's not you?
I think you and I are both not qualified in any sort of way to dive into this.
It sounds kind of creepy.
Honestly, with all the stuff in the world that I am interested in, computers and our brains are at the bottom.
Oh, I like this stuff. It's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question. I'm not denying that, but it is just so. Because I feel like we debate it so much in our world where it's just uninteresting to me.
Really?
Right? But I personally would advise against it, right? Until science proves it, amends it, and
it'd be hard to prove. I think you have to do it on faith, which is an interesting thought, because maybe that's you could argue that either it's going against your faith in God to do it, or you could also argue, well, it takes faith in God that he'll keep you going. But I guess it wouldn't matter anyways, huh? Because if you just die, then, well, you'll be with him sooner.
Fair enough, man. That's how I look at death.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting.
I don't know. I don't think there's any indication in Scripture. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, write a comment of the Scripture.
There's definitely no transhumanism scriptures.
Well, yeah, but there might there's probably scriptures in terms of defiling the body, taking care of yourself, and all that. So I think that would be an individual thing to see, for them to see whether that's in line with Scripture or not, right?
Interesting thought, though. I think people in the comments should weigh in, and because I'm curious what you guys think. Like, I have like you, Ethan, I don't look at this stuff all day about transhumanism, really. I just sort of, I don't know, like to think about the ideas every once in a while.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I don't know the details, but I mean, they have shows like the show Upload, for example, where they upload their brains after they die, and it's like a virtual afterlife sort of a thing, which is kind of funny. They've got AT&T in that show, and Horizon. It's good stuff. Good jokes there. No. But yeah,
something I find slightly interesting is people who are really rich and are dying, that freeze their bodies until they can be resurrected one day. If that were possible, I'm just thinking terms pure philosophy. Are they technically dead while they're frozen, and then if they were able to be resurrected, would their soul come back down to them or something?
Well, think about the people that die in a hospital and then they're resuscitated.
That's interesting.
I mean, wouldn't you argue it'd be the same thing?
Yeah, a few more years added onto it, but yeah.
Yeah, but even if it's just an instant upload, for example, the question is how do you know it's still you? But how do you know it's still you when you go to sleep when you die and they bring you back? I don't know.
Yeah, so
I don't think we can know that, really.
Fair enough. Well, it brings so many interesting questions in my head. Like, I mean, we have the ability to clone people. Now, we don't do it because of ethical reasons, right? But we could easily do it.
Oh, imagine how much more interesting this show would be if there were 3 of me against one of Ethan.
Dude, that's what it would take to debate him. In a heartbeat. I'd be out of here.
There'd be so many puns flying left and right. That'd be great.
Yeah, but it raises the question: if we were to do that one day, would they have the same soul? Would they have a different soul? Would there be a soul at all? Right? I don't know. Commenters, comment, because I have no idea, and I've never thought about it until now.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind, people die for minutes at a time, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, and come back. So the question is, did there. We had a good friend of the ministry named Mike. He passed away since he's talked about this, but he died. He was dead for I think 7 minutes and came back, and he said it was just black. Really? And then I came back. Yeah,
that's interesting.
It was when they were doing all the near-death experience or whatever stories. You know, people saying, "Oh, I saw a light or did this." He said, "I didn't see anything," and came back.
Interesting.
So
that sounds like something Mike would say, though.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Unless he did see something, he's just trying to be Mike.
Dude, no. Mike would talk about it for a very long, extended period of time.
I don't think you know Mike.
Yeah, I knew Mike. Mountain Mike?
No.
Yeah.
Different Mike.
Different Mike?
Yeah.
Which Mike?
Different Mike.
The one that sat in the back of campus every Sunday?
We'll talk about this later.
Oh, my
It's a different Mike.
Well, there was a Mike that died a couple months ago.
Yeah, but it's not him. Different Mike.
Okay.
So it's like this was like a year and a half before that.
Oh, okay.
Maybe 2 years.
Interesting. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, but no, that he would probably but no, this Mike, he was serious. He said I didn't see anything.
Yeah. Well,
he also called hockey like I don't know. Well, he said they should be wearing dresses on they're just skating around and it's not a real sport. So
I know you were furious about that one, man.
Saying hi to Mike from down below. What's up, Mike?
Both Mikes.
Both Mikes. That's right.
Both Mikes.
Anyways, we got off topic here.
yeah, but this also makes me think. So my great grandfather, I was with him when he died back in September last year. I've never seen someone die before. He had heart failure and the flu was gaining in his lungs and all that. So it took a couple days. But when someone takes their final breath, I don't know how to like necessarily describe it. So there's a physical aspect, right, where when you're low on oxygen, your head turns purple because the veins don't have any oxygen coming in. Then he took one last breath, and then he was just gone. And watching that, right, for the first time, it's so indescribable because you can see like something happening, right? In a way. Like I remember the day before he died, he was obviously having trouble breathing and couldn't really talk from the flu, but like he was just yelling mommy, right? He was crying out for his mom, right? And he was like 85. Wow. And I don't know if he was seeing something, seeing something from the other side because his mom had died decades ago.
Interesting.
It is such an interesting thing. Death, craziest thing, indescribable.
Yeah.
And it makes it so hard for me to think that there's nothing afterwards because there's just too much stuff that goes on.
Wow. Yeah. Very interesting. We got dark with this episode this week.
I think this is like as good as it gets because it's deep. It gets us thinking.
Yeah, I agree. How long have we gone, Jesse? Oh, 5 more minutes. Well, how about we respond to a comment? Do you have your computer today or no?
I do have my computer.
We'll respond to maybe 2 or 3 comments.
It's gonna take a second. My computer doesn't like to comply.
Oh, that's fine.
Talk to them and keep them entertained, Steve.
Well, I don't know. You just see all this transhumanism stuff in like stuff as simple as the metaverse, because if you don't know what that is, it's supposed to be the new Facebook or whatever, but it's virtual reality, and it's like you have it's all about creating the metaverse, which is a space where you can live when you don't want to live in the real world, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of funky. It's like if you've ever seen the movie Ready Player One, kind of like that. But
that's what I was thinking of.
Virtual.
I'm gonna have to reset my computer.
That's all right. We'll cover comments on the next episode.
Yep.
We'll just
save your comments for next.
We'll just cut it, make it short and sweet. Yeah. Stay salty, everyone.
Is that really what you just said?
Yeah. People say stay salty. It means
that I refuse to let that become the saying of this show.
That's. It's early morning, man. My brain's functioning at like a quarter power right now.
Yeah, Steve.
I come up with phrases like "stay salty" at this hour.
Steve made me come all the way to campus 8 a.m.
Oh, how dare I?
Yeah, I know. How dare he? And it's like I live 21 minutes away from the studio. It's horrible. Be in prayer for the show.
We'll be fine. Anyways, well, actually, you know what? You're getting it up, so.
Yep.
Well, we won't disappoint you guys.
Yeah.
We'll actually respond to a comment or two.
You know what? I am really going to be surprised if someone watches far. Oh, I can't even spell Christian right.
Good enough. Okay, go to the latest episode.
Okay.
Maybe the reaction video.
Yep, let's do the reaction first. Okay,
We're reacting to the reactions of the reaction video. That's good. Reacception.
Why do you have to make it so difficult? I hate how my hair blends in with the background.
It doesn't.
Look at that. Look at that, Steve. That's blending in. That's blending in.
Well,
okay.
It's the same color. I don't know what to tell you.
Every knee shall bow. Says, this is what I used to be like a long time ago when I followed religion. So we definitely have to love these guys. Well,
yeah. One thing I think we didn't say enough is that, look, it's just a kid, so let's cut him some slack. We have, as Christians, of course, we love him. We're not saying this like, we're not trying to make fun of him necessarily. We're just sort of making fun of the effects of religion in that whole scenario. And plus the dad was clearly orchestrating a lot of that.
Yeah.
So it was really nothing against Duffy himself as a person. If he was here, I'm sure we'd be laughing about it and, treating each other like brothers, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a reaction video, so we're just going to be reacting to it, and you can't really get that sense when we're doing that, but just thought I'd clarify, of course, it wasn't to disparage the kid, but and from doing that it was.
If anyone knows how they even ended up on Oprah's show in the first place, I would love to know, so leave a comment about that. I'm assigning y'all homework on all these comments that you must write down.
Oh yeah,
but that one's important because I'm so curious, how do people like that end up on these shows?
Yeah, and then Sarah said the kid's clearly uncomfortable and unsure of himself. His answers to the questions makes it pretty obvious he has no idea what he's talking about. I can't stand it when parents teach their kids to sound and look like a Christian, but they don't understand the love of God or the teachings of Christ at all. Sad. Yeah, I agree.
Very sad.
I think I'm not a parent yet. Want to be, and want to teach my kids the right things, of course, like any good parent. But you want to teach your kids the concepts and realize that they're a different person from yourself, so you want to give them the right, teach them, as we've said before, how to think and not what to think. And that's the best way, I think, to treat anyone, really, but especially your kids who have brains that aren't fully developed and fully learned. I mean, they're a blank slate, so it's really up to you how they can turn out. And forcing your kid to yell Bible verses at people without knowing them, I'm not sure that's the right way to do it. I grew up in, if anybody knows what Awana is, it's like, I don't know, it's like a Bible verse club memorization thingy for kids. And you like have patches and stuff for memorizing certain verses, and you have like these vests that you wear and you go and you learn the Bible. I hated it when I was a kid. I really hated it because it was, well, for one, it was so boring and cheesy and bleh. But that aside, I learned a lot of Bible verses that I didn't know really what they meant. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's the answer. None of that has helped my walk with God at all. I don't go back to those Bible verses that I memorized without knowing what they meant and say, oh, I'm so glad I did that. Yeah. That has zero impact in my faith. Maybe it kept me a Christian when I could have gone astray. Maybe. Perhaps. But I don't think that's the best way to do that.
Yeah. When I was in Gnu's club, that like every few weeks they'd have you memorize verses, and you get a big old Hershey's chocolate bar if you can memorize most verses. And looking back at those, I learned to like despise those verses just because it's the same verses that every Christian says. But now that I'm older and more mature in the faith, when I go back and look at them, it almost makes me weep because now I understand it. They never explain the verses, right?
Yeah, they
always
just
kept it so
teach
basic.
you.
Yeah.
They teach you to say the words, but they never ask, "Do you know what that means?"
Yeah,
which is kind of weird. That's
like,
kind of, you need to, like, the knowing what it means is the important part, not the memorizing the words in order. I would rather a kid didn't know how to say the verse but knew what it meant every time.
Yeah, and it's like things like John 3:16. Every Christian knows it and says it, but they don't know it.
Yeah.
They know the words. If you truly understood John 3:16, you would fall apart because it summarizes everything that the Bible is about. Because not only did God love us so much, the alternative outside of the love of God is perishing. Like the Greek word there, apollymai, means literally to destroy. That's the alternative.
Is that why you're a annihilationist?
Yeah, that's part of why
He's not a nihilist, but an annihilationist.
Annihilationism.
I don't agree with it.
I don't know where I stand on it now.
It's interesting. I mean, it could be.
It's an interesting concept.
Honestly. It is. I don't really agree with it at all, but I can see their point.
Yeah,
I guess. It makes more sense than other theories.
I think that should be our next episode, is talking about hell, because it's a really interesting topic, right?
Yeah.
Because the Bible is actually a lot more ambiguous than people like to think, right?
Well, we'll save that though.
Yeah.
We don't want to give away all the fun stuff.
Don't get me started.
Yeah.
That's a really, really good episode. That is the most beautiful 1 minute I've ever seen in my life.
For those that don't know, we have an amazing producer named Jesse, who gave us a 1 minute sign. He wrote it with, what is that, pen?
He drew it out.
Oh, it was beautiful. It was like, that was real good. We would have thought it was digital or something. Yeah. Anyways, one more comment and then we'll be done.
Okay. Yep. And this is on our very long titled episode.
What, you can pick it.
Really? You're gonna give me this hard choice?
There's 4 comments.
Okay.
Well, that's too big.
Yeah, I'm Sterling Stalker. I would love to respond to your comment, but it's way too long for what we have. 30 seconds now.
Yes.
Let's see. We can do every knee shall bow again. People think today that the building they attend is the church. They saw what church you go to, but isn't the church the body of Christ? Is there thousands of bodies of Christ? Division. I agree with that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there's what the big C church and then little C church. Little C church is the building. Big C church is the body.
Yeah, the building just hosts the people in there.
Yeah, and I think what we were talking about when we were generally talking about church in this context is the building and the specific group that meets in the building. So we're not generally talking about. We don't usually say church meaning the body of Christ unless we're talking about a broad sense. But I think on this show, we probably won't talk about that quite as much because we're Christians against religion. So if anything, it's church against the church. So big C against little c.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's all we have for you guys. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Christians Against Religion. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you like us, please leave a comment. If you don't like us, also leave a comment. We would love to respond to it and answer any objections you may have.
Stay salty.
And until next week, this is Christians Against Religion.
Salty.